Thank you. Wow, how bloody inspirational is all of that? I think it's pretty exciting. So it's trying to get motivated to, I want to get outside. I'm sorry, but I've got to go. But okay, no, we'll stay with the panel. Anyways, we're going to talk about success stories. We've had a slight change in the format today due to some of the disruptions that we experienced yesterday. So I want to assure everyone that the Ministry of Agriculture, Fisheries and Food, or Food and Fisheries, will be making the recordings available for those that were not able to follow during some of the disruptions. And you'll be able to get a recording of this this event as well. So we're going to take care of you no matter what. But for today, we're going to have a closed question and answer portion at the end of the deeper dive. However, your feedback is really important, and the ministry will be sending out a detailed questionnaire to everybody that has registered for this event, and you can ask your questions at that time. So we don't want to shut anybody down, but we do want to make sure that this is a constructive evening, because we're all here to talk about regenerative agriculture in BC. So thank you for your patience out there, and thank you very much to our team and our amazing team at regenBC and all the technology that has been provided that we can put on this great event from our homes or farms or wherever we are. So one last note, and then I'm going to head into the deeper dive, but I had a number of emails and phone calls over the day, but I've got to say this. I had an email from an incredible woman in the Kootenays, and she said this: "Thank you for the ongoing provincial conversations about what we really need to support resilient agriculture and ecosystems in the province. It is vital that we keep it real." Now, this woman will know who I'm talking about, but that was very much around the messaging that was sent to me over the last 24 hours. So I wanted to share that with you. So the deeper dive success stories panel is next, and we're going to have some conversations about regenerative practices. So our first panel speaker is Heather Meeberg. Heather is President and Director of Grower Services at ES Crop Consult. Heather oversees all aspects of the monitoring programs they offer. Her specialty area includes IPM, or Integrated Pest Management, for organic and conventional production. Go for it, Heather.
Great, thank you. So I'm just waiting for my presentation to come on the screen here. There we go. Great. Well, thank you for having me. I feel like I pale in comparison to the previous guests this evening. My company plays such a small role in this, but I do get to work directly with growers, and I do feel we make a huge impact. So our company started in 1988 by Dr. Deborah Henderson, who's with the Sustainable who is the endowed chair of the Institute of Sustainable Horticulture at Kwantlen Polytechnic University. She believed strongly in IPM and started by knocking on doors of potato farms saying, I can make a difference on your farm, and approached it from the economic route of we can save you money. And collaborating with those growers is one of my favorite parts of the job. So ES Crop Consult, we hire about 25 students every summer. We have 12 full-time staff that work year-round and are work in specialized crops, and we even now have a satellite office in Pemberton, and we provide IPM services on approximately 10,000 acres of mixed vegetable and berry crops throughout the Fraser Valley and Pemberton valleys. There we go. So again, we use a small army of, sorry, I'm going to have to change my view here because the, it's got the line of people right where my talk is. Anyway, we hire a whole bunch of people that come out and they monitor the crops. We go through those 10,000 acres every week. on every farm from April right through till September. And the growers hire us mostly for peace of mind. They do save money. They do appreciate the saving on environmental impact. They have fewer surprises, and they appreciate someone going through their crop basically with a fine-tooth comb every week. It gives them peace of mind that problems will be found early. I'm sure with all of you attending the presentations this evening, you're already aware of integrated pest management, but it's looking at crop production and their pests and using a combination of tools to mitigate those pests, looking at physical, cultural, biological, and chemical, both in an economically effective and environmentally sustainable way. And what I'd like to focus on, I'm going to actually just bypass the slide here. Some of the scouting methods that we do use on the farm, we are trialing this year. Right in the center here, you can see the light spore trap. We're working on trying to predict better when late blight is going to show up. Late blight is a major pathogen on potato crops, and we want to try and minimize sprays on those crops prior to the disease coming in. We use sticky traps for seed corn maggot to try and predict when they're going to come and be a problem. We look at aphids, and we use pheromone traps as well. This is a typical vegetable crop field where we'd go through the field, taking samples around the field to get a picture of what's in the crop and whether or not there's anything that needs mitigating. But on to the meat of it here, where we're looking at what we're doing, which is just such a small part of the regenerative farming concept, is looking at, this one here is looking at the conservation of insects and beneficials and parasitoids that are all in your fields already. And in this situation, we're looking at the tuber flea beetle, which is a pest on potatoes. It causes minimal foliar damage, but the larvae tunnel into the tubers and make them not suitable for sale. But as a byproduct of this, growers of controlling this pest, they were ending up with aphid issues. So what we're looking at here is aphid control by natural predators and parasitoids by conserving those beneficial populations. And by doing that, or by still controlling the tuber flea beetle, but looking more at the overwintering generation and targeting that generation of flea beetles so that we're not impacting the beneficial population that comes out later in the summer. So we have the problem, sorry, I'm trying to go. So we can see here, this is an organic seed potato field. The green line is the aphid populations over time through the summer. And the X is when we started to see the beneficial populations come into the field. And you can see within 3-4 weeks, they actually cleaned up the population. So it was back down to acceptable levels. Of course, the squirrel hasn't sprayed for aphids, and we're just monitoring the population. So it's a good picture. But as you can see here, it times itself. The aphid peak is right around the same time as the tuber flea beetles first summer generation peak. So the growers traditionally, prior to the IPM practices coming in, would spray maybe in June, July, they'd start spraying, and they'd spray regularly these broad spectrum insecticides. Sure, they'd have a clean field, it would nuke everything, but they'd miss a spray or two, their aphid populations would increase, and they'd end up with all these other issues, and they'd never really control the flea beetles because there's too many and they're spread out over time. By controlling the overwintering generation, we're able to put on one well-targeted spray if necessary, because not all fields have them. We're getting a well-targeted, well-timed spray on early and not impacting the beneficial populations the same as the grower would be if they're spraying all through the summer. So they end up with less aphid problems, less tuber flea beetle problems, less cost going out to spray, less sprays in the environment. So by timing the sprays appropriately, we're controlling the overwintering generation. Another thing through our IPM service, like when we're monitoring the fields, we're making note of where we're finding things, and often the grower can go in and just spray a small portion of the field to control the problem rather than spraying the whole field. So instead of spraying 100%, they're spraying 10% or 5% of the field, which again, you know, it's not the perfect regenerative model, but we're still putting less chemicals into the environment and causing less impact while still allowing the grower to have an economical boost from their crop. Actually, I'm going to stop for a second, talk a little more about the aphids. This summer, I was monitoring a squash crop, and it was a conventional squash crop, but they traditionally here don't need to spray for insect pests. And I went into this one field, and there was this plant, and it was completely covered in the black cotton aphid, infested. I'm like, oh my goodness, if this spreads, we're going to be in a lot of trouble. But when I was looking at that plant, I noticed that there was already quite a few ladybugs and lacewings and beneficials around. I'm like, so I just kind of flagged the area and kept an eye on it. And so I went back to that spot over the next couple of weeks because it'll take time for it to spread. And within 3 weeks, those aphids were gone. They didn't spread, you know, past that small area, and there was plenty of beneficials. And sometimes just having that patience and that let's just wait and a little bit of faith, and it makes a big difference. This next example here is on physical control. Cabbage maggot is a huge issue out in BC here, on rutabagas and turnips. Can cause troubles even on our head brassica crops like the broccoli and cabbage. If it gets in early, it can cause a lot of damage in a field. The growers traditionally had chemical sprays that they were applying to control this pest, both in the ground and on the larvae, as well as on the maggots, as well as the adults. But of course, their sprays are limited. Their products are down to one now that is fairly ineffective, and they're only allowed to spray it a couple times, and it's not really working. So they need some alternative control. So we get to the point where, okay, we need to think outside the box here, and how are we going to do this? So a few years back, Dr. Bob Vernon from Agriculture and Agri-Foods Canada did some work on some of the farms we work with, looking at exclusion fencing. So he looked at the dynamics of the pests, the cabbage maggot fly. How do they fly? How do they find the crop they want? And he found that they fly basically right at the crop, just above the crop level. And he's like, okay, well, can we use that? Can we use that somehow to break the cycle? And so they developed this fencing that has kind of a lip on it. I don't know if you can see my hand. The camera's a little bit off here, but it's a lip on it, so it's shaped like a 7. And the flies will fly at the crop level, hit the screen, and go up to go over it, and then get trapped. So they found that with the use of this fencing, they could have a pretty clean crop without any sprays. The downside with it is it's quite expensive. It's quite laborious to put up. You have to move it if you do need to go in and cultivate. But it did work until one year when it didn't, and we weren't sure what happened there. But there was a berm, and we didn't realize that changed the altitude at which the flies were flying, and they managed to just scoot right over the fence. So we learn something every year, and we're always trying different things. This next example here is still in the rutabaga turnip root, and this is one that we looked at. This was last year, the year before, working with BC Fresh and one of their growers out in Delta, and they had terrible cabbage maggot issues, and they're like, we're willing to try anything. So Dr. Renee Prasad from University of Fraser Valley, as well as Susan Smith from the BC Ministry of Agriculture, Food and Fisheries, and myself all worked with this one grower. They put out this floating row cover to cover the crop. So it's basically just a physical exclusion of the pest from the crop. And they found that they had an earlier harvest with a larger yield. They needed less labor for the harvest due to the fact that the crop was cleaner. they had less loss. The crop that was uncovered had about a 50% loss due to cabbage mite damage, but with the cover, their loss was down to 5%. And the quote here is just one from the BC Fresh people that had said that there's little doubt that using this technique contributed immensely to the quality and consistency of the supply. So this grower is continuing to use this method to protect his crops. And it seems overwhelming, but being able to show the grower, we had done this on much smaller plots for years. So we had data to show them that this is possible, we can do this. And we had this one grower have faith that that it was worth a try. So we went ahead and did it, and they've taken that up. And, you know, you think about a 20-acre field or a 30-acre field, there's a lot less chemicals going into the environment. And next, this is one that's near and dear to my heart. It's pictures of a potato variety trial. However, we do look at variety trials in several crops. This year with the extreme heat, I haven't done my main harvest yet, but we did a field day in August, and you can see on the side here, the big pile of potatoes, there's some of them with lots of sprouts coming out, and looks a little bit odd, and that's caused from heat stress. So I'm interested to go through these varieties here. There was about 100 varieties on display, and I'm interested to see which of those varieties performed well under the heat and which ones did not, because I think moving forward, that's something we're going to have to look at. Again, you know, our climate is suitable for growing potatoes. So in that sense, our context is good. But with the climate changing, we need to shift a little bit and make sure we're focusing on varieties that can handle that fluctuation in climate or those hotter summers. And in our small way, we're making a difference out there. We're getting growers to spray a little bit less. I think more their faith in us and their trust makes a difference. They invite us onto their farms. They allow us to do these field trials on site, so they get to actually feel it, touch it, look at it. It means something. It's personal to them, and from there they take those concepts and run with them. And it's a slow process, but you think about it. When Deb started in 1988, she had about 20 acres that was monitored, and now we're over 10,000. So people in the Fraser Valley and Pemberton Valleys have really run with this IPM concept and not spraying if they don't have to, which is a win. And that's all I have. So thank you very much for having me.
Thank you. And not pale, really important work. So thank you very much. So stay where you are. We're going to bring in our next panel member. We have Lisa Zabek, an agroforestry specialist with the BC Ministry of Agriculture, Food and Fisheries. Her work is focused primarily on the silvopasture and integrated approaches to planning and management, blending agriculture, forestry, and environmental stewardship objectives. Take it away, Lisa.
Okay, there we go. Just wait for the presentation. All right. So we've been talking a lot about context, and so if we're going to back out to the landscape level, from a BC context, BC ranch agribusinesses are the largest agricultural landholder in the province. The grazing resource is an integrated mix of private and crown lands. So the crown forage, one of the key messages is that it's really essential to our beef sectors. The tenured herd grazes from late spring to early autumn on Crown Range. Where you are in the province that will depend. In the south that might be, maybe 5 months. In the north that might be 3 months, just depending on where you are. So again, the context piece. What that does do is it allows for hay production or winter feed production on the private agricultural land. So we're, as a province and as a sector, we're able to sustain and sustainably manage a larger provincial herd than could be supported solely on a private land context. So if we're looking at scale, there's about 21 million hectares of land that's under tenure to the beef sector, which is more or less in the same neighborhood as the timber harvesting land base. So it's a large piece of management, and it's a large sector on the landscape. On the right, you'll see a map with the green area is a lot of the range tenures. The upper left are the guide outfitters, so that whole green area on that upper left and middle upper are guide outfitters. The rest will be livestock grazing. That crown landscape is a very spatially complex. There's wide variation in topography, water resources, plant cover, etc. And there we go. Oops. There's a bit of a lag. It's a multiple use land base. So grazing is managed in concurrently with use of other crown resources such as timber, water, wildlife values, indigenous interests in the land base and values, recreation, domestic water supplies. So think about community watersheds, mining, etc. So over on the right is a grazing tenure up in the Malaqua area that was taken a couple of weeks ago. So in that fireweed understory, there are other grasses that the animals are actually grazing on. Climate change and the associated increasing frequency and severity of landscape level disturbances, such as wildfire, because you can see on the right again a photo of the Tonquah area. So that's the Tremont Creek wildfire. And what a massive change that creates on the landscape, that significant disturbance. And that poses management challenges, not just for the livestock sector, but there's also the potential for soil erosion, affects water supplies, very, very significant. So what we've been doing is working with the industry, and these are all industry-led initiatives. I'm going to go over 3 different projects we're working on in conjunction with BC Cattlemen's Association, as well as Flynn Roe and local and regional partners, starting at the landscape level, so Crown Forage and Water Resiliency Project, moving to a site level management, so targeted grazing or grazing for fine fuels reduction, which also has a carbon and wildfire modeling layer, which we're really not going to have time to get into, but it's become an incremental piece to the project. And then moving to animal management piece, agritech tool. So starting from the landscape level, so basically we're looking at climate change modeling and the assessing potential impacts on the surface water resource as well as the forage resources, and layering those all together so that we're able to actually assess opportunities and challenges that modeling helps us identify. So then we can try to understand the risks to surface water. So we're thinking like ponds and lakes and that type of thing, and then shifts in forage production and plant communities on the landscape, and what that gives us in terms of information, in terms of landscape connectivity, riparian areas, of course the forage, a whole variety of pieces of information. From that modeling, just checking my time, the major outputs are a series of 8 maps. So we've got reference evaporation at 2020 and 2050. We've got changes in BEC zones 2020 and 2050, disturbance history such as wildfire and time since the previous wildfires. We've got forage or plant communities, we've got slope, we've got flow accumulation models. So where is water likely to accumulate on the landscape? So complex figures, but on the left, and I don't have a pointer, on the left there is a sort of half circular blob, and within that, around a lot of the lakes, you will see perfect spherical circles. Those are about 1.5 kilometers buffers around water bodies, and that's the distance livestock will easily, depending on topography, travel to water. So you're going to have a likelihood of a higher degree of grazing. That's 2020. If you go to 2050 on the right-hand side, what you notice right away is a lack of circles over that half moon kind of blob. What that signifies is that those water bodies were assessed for degree of risk to evaporation as well as other factors. They're not termed resilient water bodies. There's going to be loss of water over time. So right away you start looking, okay, what does that mean from a management perspective? What does that mean from a fine fuels accumulation perspective? If you look at the areas between those grazing circles, outside of those grazing circles, that's going to be likely where more fine fuels will build up, which then may mean a higher risk of wildfire. You layer that into the landscape around interface areas, and you can start informing some management decisions. There's also the planning related to riparians, plant communities, specific habitats and habitat changes over time, really looking at that landscape level of analysis and informing planning. You can also look at that at a site level, and that's part of what we're going to be doing with the targeted grazing project. Now, targeted grazing is really its use of a specific kind of livestock for a determined season for a specific objective. And it's been used in actually down in the US, typically in more shrubby ecosystems. But what we're doing is taking a look at the principles, applying them here, testing them here, and assessing how is their value, how valuable can livestock be as a tool for reducing fine fuels, especially around interface areas of communities. And way of doing that, and the key is that you're actually targeting a specific use and a specific amount of material removal. And that's part of the process of defining what that might be, but ensuring that those other values are not negatively impacted. So the photo on the right is actually, it's not a targeted grazing project. It's Flinroe has a series of grazing exclosures around the province, differing ages. So on the right is something that hasn't been burned and hasn't been grazed, and it's the first time I've actually seen old growth grass. Probably not the healthiest ecosystem. On the left is something that has been grazed. Again, we're probably aiming for something in between. So real world pilots, real world demonstrations, gathering data along the way so that it informs the actual practice. And the series of demonstrations have been established around the province, and I'm going to run out of time. Cranbrook, Summerland, Peachland, looking at extensive monitoring and intensive monitoring, and basically early stages. Right now, what we've got is about 25% reduction in biomass, as well as about a 34% reduction in fuel height. So there's some positive indications, but it requires that monitoring and the monitoring over time. And then if we go to animal management, virtual fencing, looking at collars on animals, and this has been done around the globe. There's Norway, and they work on a 2G cellular technology, as well as radio telemetry from Australia, where you actually have to erect towers. So working with TELUS A4 Systems, two-story robot, to develop a made in Western Canada product that will work in our cellular topography, our cellular landscape, as well as our physical landscape, so that it will function within a cellular zones, as well as for permanent, off of GPS technology, for permanent boundaries such as rail lines that you can program in, and the animals will stay away from them. So this is really in development now. It's an agritech grant, and it's prototype development being tested in the field now, and then moving along the phases of beta testing and manufacturing and commercialization. Benefits from the environmental side, from riparians, social benefits for reduced livestock conflict along transportation corridors, maximizing the economic piece, maximizing grazing opportunities, reduced labor. There's a series of different things where this can be used. That would be me. So the next stages are really working with further partners, University of Alberta Range Research Institute, the Applied Ecology Research Station, as well as University of British Columbia in terms of the animal welfare and the behavior testing. Funding, Canadian Agricultural Partnership, Flinroe, BC Wildfire Service, the Agritech Grant Program. Because I live vicariously through a lot of different contractors and people on projects, all of this content is courtesy of Cattlemen's, The contractors, Andrew Pantel, Amanda Miller, and Reg Newman. There's some great people to work with. And that's it.
Lisa, thank you. I don't think anybody understands how important this work is, and I'm a great supporter of BC Cattlemen, and they're an incredibly progressive organization, and some of the things that have been doing are just extraordinary. So I think they're in good hands with you. So thank you very much. So stay where you are. We'll be back, and we're going to move to our next panel members. So I'd like to now introduce our next two speakers, I should say. Eva-Lena Lang is Executive Director of Organic BC. She grew up on an organic ranch and gained farming experience on agricultural operations in BC and in Europe. To increase her capacity to support farmers and grow the regional food system, she co-founded the North Okanagan Land to Table Network, as if you didn't have enough time. And Tristan Banwell manages Spray Creek Ranch, and I've been looking into this as well. It looks pretty phenomenal. A regenerative, organic, diversified 500-acre farm in northern Statliam territory near Lillooet. In addition to his volunteer work with Organic BC, Tristan co-founded the Lillooet Agriculture Food Society and BC Small Scale Meat Producers Association. You two are very busy people, so take it away. I'm sure you've got a lot to say.
All right. Good evening. My name is Tristan Banwell, and together with my family, I manage Spray Creek Ranch in the Statliam territory near Lillooet, as mentioned. And since obtaining my degree from UBC in Natural Resources Conservation, I've been farming for 12 years. I've sat on the board and many committees with Organic BC and other agriculture nonprofits, and I also participated in the most recent review of the Canadian organic standards on the livestock working group.
Hello and thank you. I'm Eva-Lena Lang, and I'm the Executive Director of Organic BC. I work and live on the unceded territory of the Secwepemc and the Syilx First Nations. And as Jennifer mentioned, I grew up on an organic ranch, and I've worked on various types of farms over the years and been closely involved with the Land to Table Network. I completed my community engaged research master's at UBCO with a focus on regional food systems and building food system networks. We're going to tell you a little bit about Organic BC, who we are, what we're doing, how we're achieving it, and how you can get involved. Early organic pioneers recognized that organic management is a living systems approach to producing food. They shared the vision that through diverse agricultural practices, soil health, human health, and planetary health could be regenerated.
Thanks to a visionary group of BC farmers, the Certified Organic Associations of BC, now called Organic BC, was formed as a nonprofit society in 1993. And as the voice of the organic sector in our province, we were instrumental in developing the National Canadian Organic Standard. So who is Organic BC? We support a growing network of farmers, ranchers, processors, and consumers who have been working together to sustain healthy ecosystems, build fair relationships, and recognize the complexity and interconnectedness of our world.
We have over 700 certified organic member operations, and BC is home to 11% of all Canadian organic operations.
And these organic operations include farmers, ranchers, processors, distributors, and they're producing tree fruits, ground crops, dairy, meat, eggs, wine, cider, beer, snacks, you name it.
You will still find the grassroots of organic at your local farmers market, and you can now find organic products wherever you shop. Organic grocery sales in Canada have increased by 28% since 2017. And in 2020, Canadians spent nearly $7 billion on organic grocery.
Every time a shopper chooses organics, they're voting for farms that protect biodiversity, prioritize animal welfare, and improve soil health. Our growing organic market and growing consumer trust in organics demonstrates that people are asking for and are willing to pay for regenerative farm practices. Organic producers across all sectors share the principles of organics. We are a community following the same standards across the country with equivalency agreements around the world, providing organic products for customers who support these organic principles.
Organic principles include improving the health of soil, plants, animals, human beings, and the planet, working within and sustaining ecological systems, and building relationships that ensure fairness, and caring for our environment and for future generations. Turning these principles into practices helps organic farmers reduce greenhouse gas emissions, sequester carbon, and increases their resilience to climate change.
When it comes to improving soil health, organic farmers are experts. We manage nutrients using cover crops, compost, and livestock integrated systems. Organic management has been shown in several studies to increase soil carbon more than conventional management and to hold on to that soil and the carbon in the soil longer. Use of synthetic nitrogen fertilizers, on the other hand, is known to deplete soil carbon. And we never forget that our organically managed soils are alive. Soil life is key to persistent soil carbon increases, and it's foundational to many of the other benefits of regenerative management, including increased water holding capacity and improved nutrient cycling.
We adhere to our principles through collaborative development of our national organic standards and voluntary certification by producers and processors. The organic community has successfully combined innovative science and experiential wisdom to develop effective production methods for all commodities. These time-tested, scalable, sustainable management methods are codified by peer-reviewed organic standards that are improved and updated every 5 years.
Organic certification validates the commitment and diligence of organic farmers and their practices through regular third-party review. The value of this verification process is evident with 30 years of consumer confidence in a continuously growing and diversifying sector.
And the term organic is a protected label within BC for agricultural products. If it says it's organic, it is certified organic. Organic agriculture is resilient, regenerative, and our positive impact is growing. Our movement is built on the wisdom of countless generations of successful agrarian societies that improved soil fertility and maintained productivity on the same land for centuries while putting nature first. Organic agriculture is conducted without the use of genetically engineered crops or synthetic pesticides and fertilizers, toxic chemicals that deplete soil life and keep farmers dependent on inputs. Organic farmers have these solutions. We'd like to share just a few examples of successful organic farms that are leading the way for regenerative agriculture.
Wild Flight Farm in Mara was established almost 30 years ago, and they crop 20 acres in rotation, producing over 50 varieties of organic vegetables and herbs. They sell their beautiful produce year-round at local farmers markets and supply a distributor to bring their products to urban customers in the Okanagan. Each year, they cover crop a full half of their production area with green manures like peas, oats, and hairy vetch to add nitrogen and organic matter and to help break pest and disease cycles. They also include cover crops undersown with cash crops that can withstand it, including their brassicas, celeriac, and leeks, as you can see in these photos. The productivity of their farm now supports a crew of a dozen, and the health of their soil is evident in the quality of their products.
Covert Farms is a vineyard in Oliver that transitioned to organic growing practices in 2005. They have very light sandy soils that they were able to maintain, but not improve using conventional methods. Since 2018, livestock integration in the orchard has been key to their organic fertility. They stock 1 cow per acre in the vineyard for 2 months, giving them clean, fertilized, and manured rows in the spring. The cattle graze cover crops like lentils, foxtail, and wild alfalfa. For the past 4 seasons, they have not added any compost, but have had their biggest crops in the past 2 seasons, with yields up 30%, while neighbors were down 20%. Their soil testing shows micronutrients improving and organic matter increasing. They continue to increase the diversity of their cover crop mixes, growing their organic matter and moving toward a dream of dry farming their grapes. They have turned around the degradation of topsoil on their farm, improving it every year while bringing down production costs.
And our farm, Spray Creek Ranch, we're humbled to be a success story because farming doesn't always feel like that on the day-to-day. Spray Creek Ranch has been farmed since the 1880s, and like most farms, this place started out with diverse and integrated farming systems, moving to a simplified commodity production model beginning in the 1950s. One farm on our field grew corn for silage under conventional tillage and chemical inputs for 27 years straight with no rotation whatsoever. When we arrived 8 years ago, we took on a commodity cow-calf ranch that could not support one family without off-farm income. But over the years, we've kicked out the crutches like chemical fertilizers and herbicides, insecticides that propped up poor production practices in the field and bad genetics in our herd. Under later calving, rotational grazing, and organic practices, our pastures have grown more diverse, our soil is improving, and our livestock are selected to thrive without expensive interventions. We now raise poultry, pigs, and cattle in a diverse agroecological system, support the livelihoods of several families, and are growing our business every year with the support of customers throughout our region who deeply value what we are doing. We're on a trajectory of improvement, regenerating the farm, our environment, as well as rural livelihoods.
We'd like to conclude with an invitation to everyone attending here to get involved with what we are doing with Organic BC. Our organization is a thriving and diverse network of innovators and leaders with decades of success in regenerative agriculture. We work with government and other organizations in BC and beyond to increase the reach and profile of the organic sector by offering accreditation and by supporting education and research. Are you involved with an organization interested in regenerative farming practices? Reach out and let's talk about how we can advance these solutions together.
Are you a producer or processor? Organic BC is made up of member organizations that certify organic operations throughout BC across all agricultural commodities at all scales for sale within BC, across Canada, and for export to global markets. And a special shout out to the BC Association for Regenerative Agriculture, which was founded in 1988. When you're ready to learn more about how organic practices and production methods can make your operation regenerative, check out our website. We're looking forward to hearing from you.
Together, we can change the trajectory of agriculture in BC and beyond. The tools are in our hands, and there are already success stories all around us. Thank you very much for inviting us to speak today, and thank you to all the other participants as well. And I'd just like to acknowledge Heather, who spoke in the beginning, and Nicholas Forsbauer in the video as our co-presidents and the time they have given as well. Thank you.
Thanks.
Thank you. Oh my God, you guys rock. This is so exciting. We have had such incredible panel members. So we've got Lisa, Heather, Eva, Lena, I hope you're feeling okay, and Tristan. And I'm going to ask a couple of questions since we don't have the open session. You know, we've got some questions that we can kind of ask all of you, and maybe all of you can sort of, you know, give a bit of an answer as it relates to what you're doing and the line of work you're doing, or just even in general. But here's a question: what does the future of farming or ranching look like to you? And we'll start with you, Lisa, if you can.
Sure. It's very diverse. As a population, if you lose a section of the population, you become unsustainable. So there's place and needed place for smaller scale producers, medium scale and large scale producers. And some of the tools that BC Cattlemen's is leading the work on, some of the presentations that we've heard here tonight shows that breadth of diversity, or it's beginning to show the breadth of diversity because there's a lot more out there. So yeah, diverse.
Very cool. Heather, thoughts?
Well, I am extremely optimistic, especially after listening to all today's speakers, but looking you know, closer to the ground, where I've seen things change over the last 25 years, working with some of our organic clients that used to, you know, have potatoes every 2 years in a field. Now they're going every 5 years. They're having a summer cover crop, multi-cropping in to try and increase the soil structure and the nutrient cycling. Really looking to expand that to, hopefully 10 years if they can in a place like Delta, where the land costs are really high. Seeing those changes is pretty inspiring. Seeing the number of acres that are, coming in using different techniques, whether it's regenerative farming or on a smaller scale using IPM, they're all leading towards making these changes. And I just think it's fabulous.
Thank you. Evelina?
Well, I feel pretty optimistic, and in my role, I really believe it's about collaboration and working together and breaking down the silos. Sorry, and really taking the time to listen from those that have generations of experience and really understand the land.
Thank you. Tristan?
Well, I can see that we have so much work to do, and it's good work, it's exciting work, and what I really want to see is more minds per acre. Stewarding the land is just amazingly complex work, and as we work on rebuilding the infrastructure that allows us to have an interconnected and diverse food system, it's going to take a lot of people getting out there and tackling these problems, so I'm pretty excited about that.
It's amazing, and I think, I look at the next generation and the young generation coming up, and it makes me pretty emotional about our future. And there's a lot of us old farmers who have been doing this for many years, and it's so fascinating to see this next generation and some really cool ideas. So how can industries adapt? So how do we move regenerative agriculture forward? So, Tristan, I'll start with you because you answered last, and give it a thought.
Yeah, I sometimes joke that we're farming with the best technology of our grandparents' generation, and farmers are, we face so many risks that we can't control that we have this built-in aversity to risk, of course. And sometimes, it amazed me in Gabe's keynote, right? His neighbor right across the fence line, with the soil that's not nearly as good. You want to see people adopting those practices. And so I think that the best thing we can do is get farmers together in these field days, pasture walks, and using our regional agrologists and disseminating information by putting farmers together in the same room and talking about what works in their bioregion.
Well said. Evelina.
Thanks. I very much agree with Tristan, and that's a lot about extension and education. And then also I think about policy a lot, and how looking at policy and really working with those that are impacted by the policies.
Well said. Heather.
Yeah, I agree with both Evelina and Tristan. Where I find the most change happens is when the growers are touching, feeling, seeing whatever new method of farming or protecting or change. Like if they could see it and touch it and see that it makes sense, they're gonna adopt it. Again, looking at your talk, Karin, with the Terramera, and like how can we make it economically viable in 1 year or 5 years? If we can show that and help them mitigate the risk, it's a no-brainer. And that's what I've seen. That turnip grower who didn't have any other options, and we showed them this choice, and they went with it, and it was economical. It's that ability to see it and touch it, and that happens with conversations.
Yeah, absolutely. Lisa?
Similar theme, communication and collaboration. Numerous tables, everybody brings differing perspectives, differing experience. You listen to each other and you find a way through. And it's, if it's going to be whatever that middle pathway looks like, because it's always changing, but it's something that everybody at the table can live with.
Yeah. It's an extraordinary journey, because so many of us that have been doing this for a number of years, it is the shame is that we can't all get together and really just hammer it out, but we're doing it virtually, and it's working. And as you can see, my technology here is, we're very limited. Living even on Vancouver Island is pretty sketchy sometimes, but you know, it is getting those minds and people and bodies together. And we've got such expertise in this province. And I think you've all talked about the diversity, but maybe I'm going to toss one last question to all of you, is because of the diversity, the incredible geography, and, you know, the differences we have in regions, you know, that's always been a kind of a stumbling block to change, because we can see what Gabe's doing, and I think it has to be understood that it's a process that each of us goes through, and we will have different methods depending on where we are. So just some thoughts on that, and I'm going to start with you again, Lisa, and just you know, you're dealing with a lot of cattlemen, and I have never seen so many people that are as passionate about the land and what they do. It's extraordinary.
Yeah, I think it comes all right back to context, because context is taken in so many ways. So for your operation, what is the context you're working within? I'll probably badly misquote one of our producer collaborators, but his comment was, he lives and works as part of a small community. So when things get tough, maybe the local bar closes down, the mill might close, but the rancher's there. His kids go to school there. He spends money, he and or she spend money in the grocery store there. It's that longevity. And that's really, everybody has a different context. So it's about applying principles and testing them out.
Yeah, absolutely. Heather.
One thing I noticed wasn't brought up today. It may have been brought up yesterday, but I think one thing that the province is doing well to look at and mitigate diversity throughout the province is the environmental farm plan with the beneficial management practices. And I'm an environmental farm planner, and I think one of the main components that I approach everything with through the environmental farm plan is that education and information sharing. And again, it is in the context of where you're at. I'm focused down in the Fraser Valley, but my knowledge of this area is sound, so I can help in this area. I wouldn't be very good up north, but I think that program in having planners throughout the province that are from those different areas really makes a big difference in helping growers see the different beneficial management practices that are out there.
Absolutely. Eva-Lena?
I would suggest that everyone looks at the success stories in their area. The organic sector is very diverse and has had a lot of success because of that collaboration. People have connected with their neighbors or people in their region to learn from each other. And Tristan's actually a great example of that. The relationships that he's built over the years and mentorship he's provided, but mentorship he has received has been from building those relationships and connecting with farmers. Thanks.
And Tristan.
Well, one thing I wanted to mention briefly is there's this concept that comes from permaculture, one of the tools in our toolbox in regenerative agriculture, of observing the natural areas and having an area set aside of the farm that you're observing. And Gabe totally showed that with his soil. You know, if you're watching what the soil in the natural system is doing and on your agroecological system, you're going to see those changes and differences. The other thing I think that I consider a lot here, because something I hear from farmers all the time, right? That would never work for me where I am, or, you know, we can't do that because of this, right? there's always someone somewhere harsher than you, farming somewhere more difficult than you, facing different challenges. So focus on your secret advantages, I call it, right? What do you have going for you on your farm? Or do you have proximity to markets or access to water, long growing days in the summer? Whatever it is on your farm, focus on those special advantages that you have and capitalize on that.
Really well said. I think you've all been incredibly just very powerful in terms of where you are within the scheme of things, and it's a real inspirational night. We've had a real full slate of amazing people. So thank you for your participation. And for the rest of you out there, stay tuned. We got more tomorrow. We start again at 6 o'clock tomorrow for our final day of presentations on technology solutions for modern regenerative agriculture. Have a great night, everybody, and got lots to think about. So we'll see you tomorrow.